Chapter 8: The Importance of Saying No. In 2009, I gathered up all my possessions, sold them or put them into storage, left my apartment, and set off for Latin America. By this time, my little dating advice blog was getting some traffic, and I was actually making a modest amount of money selling PDF and courses online. I planned on spending much of the next few years living abroad, experiencing new cultures, and taking advantage of the lower cost of living in a number of developing countries in Asia and Latin America to build my business further. It was the digital nomad dream, and as a 25-year-old adventure seeker, it was exactly what I wanted out of life. But as sexy and heroic as my plan sounded, not all of the values driving me to this nomadic lifestyle were healthy ones. Sure, I had some admirable values going on. It says to say the word. Sure, it says to say the word. A curiosity for people and culture. Some old-fashioned adventure seeking. But there also existed a faint outline of shame underlying everything else. At the time, I was hardly aware of it, but if I was completely honest with myself, I knew there was a screwed up value lurking there, somewhere beneath the surface. I couldn't see it, but in quiet moments when I was completely honest with myself, I could feel it. Along with the entitlement of my early 20s, the real traumatic shit of my teenage years had left me with a nice bundle of commitment issues. I had spent the past few years overcompensating for the inadequacy and social anxiety of my teenage years. And as a result, I felt like I could meet anybody I wanted, be friends with anybody I wanted, love anybody I wanted, have sex with anybody I wanted. So why would I ever commit to a single person, or even a single social group, a single city, or country, or culture? If I could experience everything equally, then I should experience them all equally, right? Armed with this grandiose sense of connectivity to the world, I bounced back and forth across countries and oceans in a game of global hopscotch that lasted over 5 years. I visited 55 countries, made dozens of friends, and found myself in the arms of a number of lovers, all of whom were quickly replaced, and some of whom were already forgotten by the next flight to the next country. It was a strange life, replete with fantastic horizon breaching experiences as well as superficial highs designed to numb my underlying pain. It seemed both so profound yet so meaningless at the same time, and still does. Some of my greatest life lessons and character defining moments came on the road during this period. But some of the biggest waste of my time and energy came during this period as well. Now I live in New York. I have a house and furniture and an electric bill and a wife. None of it is particularly glamorous or exciting, and I like it that way. Because after all the years of excitement, the biggest lesson I took from my adventuring was this: absolute freedom by itself means nothing. Freedom grants the opportunity for greater meaning, but by itself, there is nothing necessarily meaningful about it. Ultimately, the only way to achieve meaning and a sense of importance in one's life is through a rejection of alternative, a narrowing of a freedom, a choice of commitment to one place, one belief, or God, one person. This realization came to me slowly over the course of my years traveling. As with most successes in life, you have to drown yourself in them to realize that they don't make you happy. Such was traveling with me. As I drowned in my 53rd, 54th, and 55th country, I began to understand that while all of my experiences were exciting and great, few of them would have any lasting significance. Whereas my friends back home were settling down into marriages, buying houses, and giving their time to interesting companies or political causes, I was floundering from one eye to the next. In 2011, I traveled to St. Petersburg, Russia. The food sucked. The weather sucked. Snow in May. Are you fucking kidding me? My apartment sucked. Nothing worked. Not everything was overpriced. The people were rude and smelled funny. Nobody smiled and everyone drank too much. Yet I loved it. It was one of my favorite trips. There is a bluntness to Russian culture that generally rubs Westerners the wrong way. Gone are the fake niceties and verbal webs of politeness. You don't smile at strangers or pretend to like anything you don't. In Russia, if something is stupid, you say it is stupid. If someone is being an asshole, you tell him he's being an asshole. If you really like someone and are having a great time, you tell her you like her and are having a great time. It doesn't matter if this person is a friend, a stranger, or someone you met 5 minutes ago on the street. The first week, I found all of this really uncomfortable. I went on to a coffee date with a Russian girl, and within 3 minutes of sitting down, she looked at me funny and told me that what I had just said was stupid. I nearly choked on my drink. There was nothing combative about the way she said it. It was spoken as if it were some mundane fact, like the quality of the weather that day, or a true size, but I was still shocked. After all, in the West, such outspokenness is seen as highly offensive, especially from someone you just met. But it went on like this with everyone. Everyone came across as rude all the time, and as a result, my Western coded mind felt attacked on all sides. Nagging insecurities began to surface in situations where they hadn't existed in years. But as the weeks wore on, I got used to the Russian frankness, much as I did the midnight sunset and the vodka that went down like ice water. And then I started appreciating it for what it really was: unadulterated expression, honesty in the truest sense of the word, communication with no conditions, no string attached, no ulterior motive, no sales jobs, no desperate attempts to be liked. Somehow, after years of travel, it was in perhaps the most un American of places where I first experienced a particular flavor of freedom: the ability to say whatever I thought or felt without fear of repercussion. It was a strange form of liberation through accepting rejection, and someone who had been starved of this kind of blunt expression most of his life. First by an emotional repressed family life, then later by a meticulously constructed false display of confidence. I got drunk on it like, well, finest damn vodka I've ever had. The month I spent in St. Petersburg went by in a blur, and by the end, I didn't want to leave. Travel is a fantastic self development tool because it educates you from the values of your culture and shows you that another society can live with entirely different values and so function and not hate themselves. This exposure to different cultural values and metrics then forces you to re examine what seems obvious in your own life and to consider that perhaps it is not necessarily the best way to live. In this case, Russia had me re-examining the bullshitty, fake, nice communication that is so common in Anglo culture, and asking myself if this wasn't somehow making us more insecure around each other and worse at intimacy. I remember discussing the dynamic with my Russian teacher one day, and he had an interesting theory. Having lived under communism for so many generations, with little to no economic opportunity and caged by a culture of fear, Russian society found the most valuable currency to be trust. And to build trust, you have to be honest. That means when things suck, you say so openly and without apology. People displays of unpleasant honesty were rewarded for the simple fact that they were necessary for survival. You had to know whom you could rely on and whom you couldn't, and you needed to know quickly. But in the free West, my Russian teacher continued, there existed an abundance of economic opportunity, so much economic opportunity that it became far more valuable to present yourself in a certain way, even if it was false, than to actually be that way. Trust lost its value. Appearances and salesmanship become more advantageous forms of expression. Knowing a lot of people superficially was more beneficial than knowing a few people closely. This is why it became the norm in Western cultures to smile and say polite things even when you don't feel like it. To tell little white lies and agree with someone whom you don't actually agree with. This is why people learn to pretend to be friends with people they don't actually like. to buy things they don't actually want. The economic system promotes such deception. The downside of this is that you never know in the West if you can completely trust the person you are talking to. Sometimes this is even the case among good friends or family members. There is such pressure in the West to be likable that often people often reconfigure their entire personality depending on the person they are dealing with. Rejection makes your life better. As an extension of our positivity consumer culture, many of us have been indoctrinated with the belief that we should try to be as inherently accepting and affirmative as possible. This is a cornerstone of many of the so called positive thinking books. Open yourself up to opportunities, be accepting, say yes to everything and everyone, and so on. But we need to reject something. Otherwise, we stand for nothing. If nothing is better or more desirable than anything else, then we are empty and our life is meaningless. We are without values and therefore live our life without any purpose. The avoidance of rejection, both giving and receiving it, is often sold to us as a way to make ourselves feel better. But avoiding rejection gives us short term pleasure by making us rudderless and directionless in the long term. To truly appreciate something, you must confine yourself to it. There is a certain level of joy and meaning that you reach in life only when you spend decades investing in a single relationship, a single craft, a single career, and you cannot achieve those decades of investment without rejecting the alternatives. The act of choosing a value for yourself requires rejecting alternative values. If I choose to make my marriage the most important part of my life, that means I am probably choosing not to make cocaine forward hookah orgies an important part of my life. If I am choosing to judge myself based on my ability to have open and accepting friendships, that means I am rejecting trashing my friends behind their backs. These are all healthy decisions, yet they require rejection at every turn. The point is this: we all must give a fuck about something in order to value something. And to value something, we must reject what is not that something. To value X, we must reject non X. That rejection is an inherent and necessary part of maintaining our values and therefore our identity. We are defined by what we choose to reject. And if we reject nothing, perhaps in fear of being rejected by something ourselves, we essentially have no identity at all. The desire to avoid rejection at all costs, to avoid confrontation and conflict, the desire to attempt to everything to as the desire to attempt to accept everything equally and to make everything cohere and harmonize is a deep and subtle form of entitlement. Entitled people, because they feel as though they deserve to feel great all the time, avoid rejecting anything because doing so might make them or someone else feel bad. And because they refuse to reject anything, they live a valueless, pleasure driven, and self absorbed life. All they give a fuck about is sustaining the eye a bit longer, to avoid the inevitable failure of their life, to pretend the suffering away. Rejection is an important and crucial life skill. Nobody wants to be stuck in a relationship that isn't making them happy. Nobody wants to be stuck in a business doing work they hate and don't believe in. Nobody wants to feel that they can't say what they really mean. Yet people choose this thing all the time. Honesty is a natural human craving, but part of having honesty in our lives is becoming comfortable with saying and hearing the word no. In this way, rejection actually makes our relationships better and our emotional lives healthier. Boundaries. Once upon a time, there were two youngsters, a boy and a girl. Their families hated each other, but the boy snuck into a party hosted by the girl's family because he was kind of a dick. The girl sees the boy, and Angel sings so sweetly to her lady part that she instantly falls in love with him. Just like that, and so it sneaks into her garden and they decide to get married the next freaking day. Because that's totally practical, especially when your parents want to murder each other. Jump ahead a few days. Their families find out about the marriage and throw a shit fit. Mercutio dies, The girl is so upset that she drinks a potion that will put her to sleep for 2 days. But unfortunately, the young couple hasn't learned the ins and outs of good marital communication yet, and the young girl totally forgets to mention something about it to her new husband. The young man therefore mistakes his new wife's self induced coma for suicide. He then totally loses his marble and he commits suicide, thinking he's going to be with her in the afterlife or some shit. But then she wakes up from her 2 day coma only to learn that her new husband has committed suicide. So she has the exact same idea and kills herself to the end. Hmm. Romeo and Juliet is synonymous with romance in our culture today. It's seen as the love story in English speaking culture, an emotional ideal to live up to. Yet, when you really get down to what happens in the story, these kids are absolutely out of their fucking minds and they just killed themselves to prove it. It's suspected by many scholars that Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet not to celebrate romance, but rather to satirize it, to show how absolutely naughty it was. It didn't mean for the play to be a glorification of love. In fact, it meant it to be the opposite. A big flashing neon sign blinking, keep out, with police tape around it saying, do not cross. For most of human history, romantic love was not celebrated as it is now. In fact, up until the mid 19th century or so, love was seen as an unnecessary and potentially dangerous psychological impediment to the more important things in life, like farming well or marrying a guy with a lot of sheep. Young people were often forcibly steered clear of their romantic passions in favor of practical economic marriages that would yield stability for both them and their families. But today, we all get brain boners for this kind of batshit crazy love. It dominates our culture, and the more dramatic, the better. Whether it's Ben Affleck working to destroy an asteroid to save the earth for the girl he loves, or Mel Gibson murdering hundreds of Englishmen and fantasizing about his raped and murdered wife while being tortured to death, or that 11 chick or that Elvin Sheik giving up her immortality to be with Aragorn in Lords of the Rings, or stupid romantic comedies where Jimmy Fallon forgoes his Red Sox playoff ticket because Drew Barrymore has like needs or something. If this sort of romantic love were cocaine, then as a culture we'd all be like Tony Montana in Scarface, burying our faces in a fucking mountain of it, screaming, say hello to my little friend. The problem is that we are finding out that romantic love is kind of like cocaine, like frighteningly similar to cocaine, like stimulates the exact same part of your brain as cocaine, like gets you high and makes you feel good for a while, but also creates as many problems as it solves as does cocaine. Most elements of romantic love that we pursue, the dramatic and dizzyingly emotional displays of affection, the topsy-turvy ups and downs, aren't healthy, genuine displays of love. In fact, they are often just another form of entitlement playing out through people's relationships. I know that makes me sound like such a downer. Seriously, what kind of guy shits on romantic love? But hear me out. The truth is, there are healthy forms of love and unhealthy forms of love. Unhealthy love is based on two people trying to escape their problems through their emotions for each other. In other words, they are using each other as an escape. Healthy love is based on two people acknowledging and addressing their own problems with each other's support. The difference between a healthy and an unhealthy relationship comes down to two things. One, how well each person in the relationship accepts responsibility. And two, the willingness of each person to both reject and be rejected by their partner. Anywhere there is an unhealthy or toxic relationship, there will be a poor and porous sense of responsibility on both sides, and there will be an inability to give and or receive rejection. Wherever there is a healthy and loving relationship, there will be clear boundaries between the two people and their values. There will be an open avenue of giving and receiving rejection when necessary. By boundaries, I mean the delineation between two people's responsibility for their own problems. People in a healthy relationship with strong boundaries will take responsibility for their own values and problems and not take responsibility for their partner's values and problems. People in a toxic relationship with poor or no boundaries will regularly avoid responsibility for their own problems and or take responsibility for their partner's problems. What do poor boundaries look like? Here are some examples. You can't go out with friends without me. You know how jealous I get. You have to stay home with me. My coworkers are idiots. They always make me late to meetings because I have to tell them how to do their jobs. I can't believe you made me feel so stupid in front of my own sister. Never disagree with me in front of her again. I'd love to take that job in Morocco, but my mother would never forgive me for moving so far away. I can date you, but can you not tell my friend Cindy? She gets really insecure when I have a boyfriend and she doesn't. In each scenario, the person is either taking responsibility for problems, emotions that are not theirs, or demanding that someone else take responsibility for their problems or emotions. In general, entitled people fall into one of the two traps in their relationships. Either they expect other people to take responsibility for their problems. I wanted a nice, relaxing weekend at home. You should have known that and cancelled your plans. Or they take on too much responsibility for other people's problems. She just lost her job again, but it's probably my fault because I wasn't as supportive of her as I could have been. I'm going to help her rewrite her resume tomorrow. Entitled people adopt these strategies in their relationships as with everything. To to help avoid accepting responsibility for their own problems. As a result, their relationships are fragile and fake, products of avoiding inner pain rather than embracing a genuine appreciation and adoration of their partner. This goes not just for romantic relationships, by the way, but also for family relationships and friendships. An overbearing mother may take responsibility for every problem in her children's life. Her own entitlement then encourages an entitlement in her children as they grow up to believe other people should always be responsible for their problems. This is why the problems in your romantic relationships always heavily resemble the problems in your parents' relationships. When you have key areas of responsibility for your emotions and actions, area where it's unclear who is responsible for what, whose fault is what you are doing, why you are whose fault is why you are doing what you are doing, you never develop strong values for yourself. Your only value becomes making your partner happy, or your only value becomes making your partner making you happy. This is self-defeating, of course, and relationships characterized by such murkiness usually go down like the Edinburgh with all the drama and fireworks. People can't solve your problems for you, and they shouldn't try because that won't make you happy. You can't solve other people's problems for them either because that likewise won't make them happy. The mark of an unhealthy relationship is two people who try to solve each other's problems in order to feel good about themselves. Rather, a healthy relationship is when two people solve their own problems in order to feel good about each other. The setting of proper boundaries doesn't mean you can't help or support your partner or be helped and supported yourself. You both should support each other, but only because you choose to support and be supported, not because you feel obligated or entitled. Entitled people who blame others for their own emotions and actions do so because they believe that if they constantly paint themselves as victims, eventually someone will come along and save them and they will receive the love they've always wanted. Entitled people who take the blame for other people's emotions and actions do so because they believe that if they fix their partner and save him or her, they will receive the love and appreciation they've always wanted. These are the yin and yang of any toxic relationship: the victim and the saver, the person who starts fire because it makes her feel important, and the person who puts out fires because it makes him feel important. These two types of people are drawn strongly into one another and they usually end up together. Their pathologies match one another perfectly. Often they are grown with parents who each exhibit one of these traits as well. So their model for a happy relationship is one based on entitlement and poor boundaries. Sadly, they both fail in meeting the other's actual needs. In fact, their pattern of over-blaming and over-accepting blame perpetuates the entitlement and shitty self-worth that have been keeping them from getting their emotional needs met in the first place. The victim creates more and more problems to solve, not because additional real problems exist, but because it gets her the attention and affection she craves. The problem solver and the solver solves not because she actually cares about the problems, but because she believes she must fix others' problems in order to deserve attention and affection for herself. In both cases, the intentions are selfish and conditional, and therefore self sabotaging, and genuine love is rarely experienced. The victim, if he really loved a saver, would say, "Look, this is my problem, you don't have to fix it for me. Just support me while I fix it myself." That would actually be a demonstration of love, taking responsibility for your own problems and not holding your partner responsible for them. If the saver really wanted to save the victim, the saver would say, "Look, you are blaming others for your own problem. Deal with this yourself." And in a sick way, that would actually be a demonstration of love, helping someone solve their own problems. Instead, victims and savers both use each other to achieve emotional highs. It's like an addiction they fulfill in one another. Ironically, when presented with emotionally healthy people to date, they usually feel bored or lack chemistry with them. They pass on emotionally healthy, secure individuals because the secure partner's solid boundaries don't feel exciting enough to stimulate the constant highs necessary in the entitled person. For victims, the hardest thing to do in the world is to hold themselves accountable for their problems. They spend their whole life believing that others are responsible for their fate. That first step of taking responsibility for themselves is often terrifying. For savers, the hardest thing to do in the world is to stop taking responsibility for other people's problems. They spend their whole life feeling valued and loved only when they are saving somebody else. So letting go of this net is terrifying to them as well. If you make a sacrifice for someone you care about, it needs to be because you want to, not because you feel obligated or because you fear the consequences of not doing so. If your partner is going to make a sacrifice for you, it needs to be because he or she genuinely wants to, not because you've manipulated the sacrifice through anger or guilt. Acts of love are valid only if they are performed without conditions or expectations. It can be difficult for people to recognize the difference between doing something out of obligation and doing it voluntarily. So here is a litmus test. Ask yourself, if I refused, how would the relationship change? Similarly ask, if my partner refused something I wanted, how would the relationship change? If the answer is that a refusal would cause a blowout of drama and broken china plate, then that's a bad sign for your relationship. It suggests that your relationship is conditional, based on superficial benefits received from one another, rather than on unconditioned acceptance of each other, along with each other's problems. People with strong boundaries are not afraid of a temper tantrum, an argument, or getting hurt. People with weak boundaries are terrified of those things and will constantly mold their own behavior to fit the highs and lows of their relationship emotional roller coaster. People with strong boundaries understand that it's unreasonable to expect two people to accommodate each other 100% and fulfill every need the other has. People with strong boundaries understand that they may hurt someone's feelings sometimes, but ultimately, they can't determine how other people feel. People emotions, but rather about each partner supporting the other in their individual growth and in solving their own problems. It's not about giving a fuck about everything. It's not about giving everything your partner gives a fuck about. It's about giving a fuck about your partner regardless of the fuck he or she gives. That's unconditional love, baby. How to build trust. My wife is one of those women who spend a lot of time in front of the mirror. She loves to look amazing, and I love for her to look amazing too, obviously. Nights before we go out, she comes out of the bathroom after an hour long makeup, hair, clothes, whatever women do in their session, and asks me how she looks. She is usually gorgeous. Every once in a while, though, she looks bad. Maybe she tries to do something new with her aim, or maybe she tries to do something with her aim, or decided to wear a pair of boots that some flamboyant fashion designer from Milan thought were avant-garde. Whatever the reason, it just doesn't work. When I tell her this, she usually gets pissed off. When I tell her this, she usually gets pissed off as she marches back into the closet or the bathroom to redo everything and make us 30 minutes late. She spouts a bunch of four-letter words and sometimes even slings a few of them in my direction. Men stereotypically Men stereotypically lie in this situation to make their girlfriends, wives happy, but I don't. Why? Because honesty in my relationship is far important to me than feeling good all the time. The last person I should ever have to censor myself with is the woman I love. Fortunately, I am married to a woman who agrees and is willing to hear my uncensored thoughts. She calls me out on my bullshit too, of course, which is why one of the most important traits she offers me as a partner. Sure, my ego gets bruised sometimes and I bitch and complain and try to argue, but a few hours later I come sucking back and admit she was right. And holy crap, she makes me a better person even though I hate hearing it at the time. When our highest priority is to always make ourselves feel good or to always make our partner feel good, then nobody ends up feeling good and our relationship falls apart without our even knowing it. Without conflict, there can be no trust. Conflict exists to show us who is there for us unconditionally and who is just there for the benefit. No one trusts a yes man. If disappointment panda were here, No one trusts a yes man. If disappointment find our way here, it tell you that the pain in our relationship is necessary to cement our trust in each other and produce greater intimacy. For a relationship to be healthy, both people must be willing and able to both say no and hear no. Without that negation, without that occasional rejection, boundaries break ground and one person's problem and values come to dominate the others. Conflict is not only normal, then it's absolutely necessary for the maintenance of a healthy relationship. If two people who are close are not able to hash out their differences openly and vocally, then the relationship is based on manipulation and misrepresentation, and it will slowly become toxic. Trust is the most important Trust is the most important ingredient in any relationship for the simple reason that without trust, trust is the most important ingredient in any relationship. For the simple reason that without trust, the relationship doesn't actually mean anything. A person could tell you that she loves you, wants to be with you, would give up everything for you, but if you don't trust her, you get up everything for you. But if you don't trust her, you get no benefit from those statements. You don't feel loved until you trust that the love being expressed towards you comes without any special conditions or baggage attached to it. This is what is so destructive about cheating. It's not about the sex. It's about the trust that has been destroyed as a result of the sex. Without trust, the relationship can no longer function. So it's either rebuild the trust or say your goodbyes. I often get emails from people who have been cheated on and by their significant other but wants to stay with that partner and are wondering how they can trust him or her again. Without trust, they tell me the relationship has begun to feel like a burden, feel like a threat that must be monitored and questioned rather than enjoyed. The problem here is that most people who get caught cheating apologize and give the it will never happen again spiel, and then that's that. As if penises fell into various orifices completely by accident. Oh shit. Many shitties accept this response at face value and don't question the values and thoughts given by their partner. Pun totally intended. They don't ask themselves whether those values and thoughts make their partner a good person to stay with. They are so concerned with holding on to their relationship that they fail to recognize that it's become a black hole consuming their self-respect. If people cheat, it's because something other than the relationship is more important to them. It may be power over others. It may be validation through sex. It may be giving in to their own impulses. Whatever it is clear that the cheater's values are not aligned in a way to support a healthy relationship. And if the cheater doesn't admit this or come to terms with it, if he just gives the old I don't think know what I was thinking. I was stressed out and drunk and she was there response. I was stressed out and drunk and she was there. Then it lacks the serious self-awareness necessary to solve any relationship problems. What needs to happen is that cheaters have to start peeling away at their self-awareness onion and figure out what fucked up values cause them to break the trust of the relationship. And whether they actually still value the relationship, they need to be able to say, you know what, I'm selfish, I care about myself more than the relationship. To be honest, I don't really respect the relationship much at all. If cheaters can express their shitty values and show that those values have been overridden, then there is no reason to believe that they can be trusted. And if they can't be trusted, then the relationship is not going to get better or change. The other factors in regaining trust after it's been broken is a practical one, a track record. If someone breaks your trust, words are nice, but then you need to see a consistent track record of improved behavior. Only then can you begin trusting that the cheater's values are now aligned properly and that the person really will change. Unfortunately, building a track record for trust takes time, certainly a lot more time than it takes to break trust, and during that trust building period, things are likely to be pretty shitty. So both people in the relationship must be conscious of the struggle they are choosing to undertake. I use the example of cheating in a romance relationship, but this process applies to a breach in every relationship. When trust is destroyed, it can be rebuilt only if the following two steps happen. 1. The trust breaker admits the true values that caused the breach and owns up to them. And 2. The trust breaker builds a solid track record of improved behavior over time. Without the first step, there should be no attempt at reconciliation in the first place. Trust is like a china plate. If you break it once with some care and attention, you can put it back together again. But if you break it again, it splits even into more pieces and it takes far longer to piece together again. If you break it more and more times, eventually it shatters to the point where it's impossible to restore. There are too many broken pieces and too much dust. Freedom through commitment. Consumer culture is very good at making us want more. More. Underneath all the hype and marketing is the implication that more is always better. Make more money, visit more countries, have more experiences, be with more women. But more is not always better. In fact, it is the opposite. In fact, the opposite is true. We are actually often happier with less when we are overloaded with opportunities and options. But more is not always better. In fact, the opposite is true. We are actually often happier with less when we are overloaded with opportunities and options. We suffer from what psychologists refer to as the paradox of choice. Basically, the more options we are given, the less satisfied we become with whatever we choose. Because we are aware of all the other options we are potentially forfeiting. So, if you have a choice between two places to live and pick one, you will likely feel confident and comfortable that you made the right choice. You will be satisfied with your decision. But if you have a choice among 28 places to live and pick one, the paradox of choice says that you will likely spend years agonizing, doubting, and second guessing yourself, wondering if you really made the right choice and if you're actually maximizing your own happiness. And this anxiety, this desire for certainty and perfection and success will make you unhappy. So, what do we do? Well, if you are like I used to be, you avoid choosing anything at all. You aim to keep your options open as long as possible. You avoid commitment. But while investing deeply in one person, one place, one job, one activity might deny us the breadth of experience, with like pursuing a breadth of experience denies us the opportunity to experience the reward of depth of experience. There are some experiences that you can have only when you've lived in the same place for 5 years, when you've been with the same person for over a decade, when you've been working on the same skill or craft for half your lifetime. Now that I am in my 30s, I can finally recognize that commitment in its own way offers a world of opportunity and experience that would otherwise never be available to me, no matter where I went or what I did. When you are pursuing a wide breadth of experience, there are diminishing returns to each new adventure, each new person or thing. When you've never left your home country, the first country you visit inspires a massive perspective shift because you have such a narrow experience base to draw on. But when you've been to 20 countries, the first 20 adds, the 21st adds little, and when you've been to 50, the 51st adds even less. The same goes for material possessions, money, hobbies, jobs, friends, and romantic sexual partners. All the lame superficial values people choose for themselves. The older you get, the more experience you get, the less significantly each new experience affects you. The first time I drank at a party was exciting. The 100th time it was fun. The 500 times felt like a normal weekend, and the 1,000 times felt boring and unimportant. The big story for me personally over the past few years has been my ability to open myself up to commitment. I've chosen to reject all but the very best people and experiences and values in my life. I shut down all my business projects and decided to focus on writing full time. Since then, my website has become more popular than I've ever imagined. I've committed to one woman for the long haul, and to my surprise, I've found this more rewarding than any of the flings, tries, and one night stands I had in the past. I've committed to a single geographic location and doubled down on the handful of my significant, genuine, healthy friendships. And what I have discovered is something entirely counterintuitive, that there is freedom and liberation in commitment. I have found increased opportunity and upside in rejecting alternatives and distractions in favor of what I have chosen to let truly matter to me. Commitments give you freedom because you are no longer distracted by the unimportant and frivolous. Commitment gives you freedom because it owns your attention and focus. directing them towards what is most efficient at making you healthy and happy. Commitment makes decision making easier and removes any fear of missing out. Knowing that what you already have is good enough. Why would you ever stress about chasing more again? Commitment allows you to focus intently on a few highly important goals and achieve a greater degree of success than you otherwise could. In this way, the rejection of alternatives liberates us. Rejection of what does not align with our most important values, with our chosen metrics. Rejection of the constant pursuit of breadth without depth. Yes, breadth of experience is likely necessary and desirable when you are young. After all, you have to go out there and discover what seems worth investing yourself in. But depth is where the gold is buried, and you have to stay committed to something and go deep to dig it up. That's true in relationship, in a career, in building a great lifestyle, in everything. So, chapter 9, and then you die. I guess this is the last chapter. Seek the truth for yourself, and I will meet you there. That was the last thing Josh ever said to me. He said it ironically, attempting to sound deep while simultaneously making fun of people who attempt to sound deep. He was drunk and high, and he was a good friend. The most transformational moment of my life occurred when I was 19 years old. My friend Josh had taken me to a party on a lake just north of Dallas. There were condos on the hill, and below the hill was a pool, and below the pool was a cliff overlooking the lake. It was a small cliff, maybe 30 feet high. Certainly high enough to give you a second thought about jumping, but low enough that with the right combination of alcohol and peer pressure, that second thought could easily vanish. Shortly after arriving at the party, Josh and I sat in the pool together, drinking beers and talking as young angsty males do. We talked about drinking and bands and girls and all the cool stuff Josh had done that summer since dropping out of music school. We talked about playing in a band together and moving to New York City, an impossible dream at the time. We were just kids. Is it okay to jump off that? I asked after a while, nodding towards the cliff over the lake. Yeah, just said. People do it all the time here. Are you going to do it? He shrugged. Maybe. We'll see. Later in the evening, Josh and I got separated. I had become distracted by a pretty Asian girl who liked video games, which to me, as a teenage nerd, was akin to winning the lottery. She had no interest in me, but she was friendly and happy to let me talk. So I talked. After a few beers, I gathered enough courage to ask her to go up to the house with me to get some food. She said sure. As we walked up the hill, we bumped into Josh coming down. I asked him if he wanted food, but he declined. I asked him where I could find him later on. He smiled and said, seek the truth for yourself, and I will meet you there. I nodded and made a serious face. Okay, I'll see you there. I replied, as if everyone knew exactly where the truth was and how to get it. Josh laughed and walked down the hill towards the cliff. I laughed and continued up the hill towards the cliff. I don't remember how long I was inside. I just remember that when the girl and I came out, everyone was gone and there was silence. The pool was empty. People were running down the hill towards the shoreline below the cliff. There were others already down by the water. I could make out a couple guys swimming around. It was dark and I had to see. The music droned on, but nobody listened. Still not putting two and two together, I hurried down to the shoreline, gnawing at my sandwich, curious as to what everyone was looking at. Halfway down, the pretty Asian girl said to me, I think something terrible has happened. When I got to the bottom of the hill, I asked someone where Josh was. No one looked at me or acknowledged me. Everyone stared at the water. I asked, again, and a girl started crying uncontrollably. That's when I put two and two together. It took scuba divers 3 hours to find Josh's body at the bottom of the lake. The autopsy would later say that his legs had cramped up due to dehydration from the alcohol, as well as to the impact of the jump from the cliff. It was dark out when he went in. The water layered on the night, black on black. No one could see where his screams for help were coming from. Just the splashes, just the sounds. His parents later told me that he was a terrible swimmer. I had no idea. It took me 12 hours to let myself cry. I was in my car driving back home to Austin in the next morning. I called my dad and told him that I was still near Dallas and that I was going to miss work. I had been working for him that summer. He asked why, what happened, is everything alright? And that's when it all came out, the waterworks, the wails and the screams and the snot. I pulled the car over to the side of the road and clutched the phone and cried the way a little boy cries to his father. I went into a deep depression that summer. I thought I had been depressed before, but this was a whole new level of meaninglessness. Sadness so deep that it physically hurt. People would come by and try to cheer me up, and I would sit there and hear them say all the right things and do all the right things, and I just felt nothing. I dreamed about George for a few months after that. Dreams where he and I would have full blown conversations about life and death, as well as about random pointless things. Up until that point in my life, I had been a pretty typical middle class stoner kid, lazy, irresponsible, socially anxious, and deeply insecure. George, in many ways, had been a person I looked up to. He was older, more confident, more experienced, and more accepting of and open to the world around him. In one of my last dreams of George, I was sitting in a jacuzzi with him. Yeah, I know weird. And I said something like, I am really sorry you died. It laughed. I don't remember exactly what his words were, but he said something like, why do you care that I'm there when you are still so afraid to leave? I woke up crying. It was sitting on my mom's couch that summer, staring into the so called abyss, seeing the endless and incomprehensible nothingness where Josh's friendship used to be. When I came to the startling realization that if there really is no reason to do anything, then there is also no reason to not do anything. That in the face of the inevitability of death, there is no reason to ever give in to one's fear or embarrassment or shame, since it's all just a bunch of nothing anyway. And that by spending the majority of my short life avoiding what was painful and uncomfortable, I had essentially been avoiding being alive at all. That summer, I gave up the weed and the cigarettes and the wood games, and I gave up my silly rockstar fantasies and dropped out of music school and signed up for college courses. I started going to the gym and lost a bunch of weight. I made new friends. I got my first girlfriend. For the first time in my life, I actually studied for classes, gaining me the startling realization that I could make good grades if only I gave a shit. The next summer, I challenged myself to read 50 non-fiction books in 50 days and then did it. The following year, I transferred to an excellent university on the other side of the country, where I excelled for the first time both academically and socially. Josh's death marks the clearest before after point I can identify in my life. With tragedy, I was inhibited, unambitious, forever obsessed, and confined by what I imagined the world might be thinking of me. Post strategy, I morphed into a new person. Responsible, curious, hardworking. I still had my insecurities and my baggage, as we always do, but now I give a fuck about something more important than my insecurities and baggage. And that made all the difference. Oddly, it was someone else's death that gave me permission to finally leave. And perhaps the worst moment of my life was also the most transformational. Death scares us, and because it scares us, we avoid thinking about it, talking about it, sometimes even acknowledging it, even when it's happening to someone close to us. Yet, in a bizarre, backward way, death is a light by which the shadow of all of life's meaning is measured. Without death, everything would feel inconsequential, all experience arbitrary, all metrics and values suddenly zero. Be something beyond ourselves. Ernest Becker was an academic outcast. In 1960, he got his PhD in anthropology. His doctoral research compared the unlikely and conventional practices of Zen Buddhism and psychoanalysis. At the time, Zen was seen as something for hippies and drug addicts, and Freudian psychoanalysis was considered a quack form of psychology left over from the Stone Age. In his first job as an assistant professor, Becker quickly fell into a crowd that denounced the practice of psychiatry as a form of fascism. They saw the practice as an unscientific form of oppression against the weak and helpless. The problem was that Becker's boss was a psychiatrist, so it was kind of like walking into your first job and proudly comparing your boss to Hitler. As you can imagine, he was fired. So Becker took his radical ideas somewhere that they might be accepted, Berkeley, California, but this too didn't last long because it wasn't just his anti establishment tendencies that got Becker into trouble, it was his odd teaching method as well. He would use Shakespeare to teach psychology, psychology textbook to teach anthropology, and anthropological data to teach sociology. He had dressed up as a king, clear and do mock sword fights in class and go on long political rants that had little to do with the lesson plan. His students adored him, the other faculty looked at him. Less than a year later, he was fired again. Becker then landed at San Francisco State University, where he actually kept his job for more than a year. But when student protests erupted over the Vietnam War, the university called in on the National Guard and things got violent. When Becker sided with the students and publicly condemned the actions of the dean, again his boss being Hitler Square and everything, he was once again promptly fired. Becker changed jobs 4 times in 6 years, and before he could get fired for the fifth, he got colon cancer. The prognosis was grim. He spent the next few years bedridden and had little hope of surviving. So Becker decided to write a book. This book would be about death. Becker died in 1974. His book, The Denier of Death, would win the Pulitzer Prize and become one of the most influential intellectual works of the 20th century, shaking up the fields of psychology and anthropology while making profound philosophical claims that they are still influential today. The denial of death essentially makes 2 points. One, humans are unique in that we are only animals that can conceptualize and think about ourselves abstractly. Dogs don't sit around and worry about their career. Cats don't think about their past mistakes or wonder what would have happened if they've done something differently. Monkeys don't argue over future possibilities, just as fish don't sit around wondering if other fish would like them more if they had longer fins. As humans, we are blessed with the ability to imagine ourselves in hypothetical situations, to contemplate both the past and the future, to imagine other realities or situations where things might be different. And it's because of this unique mental ability, Becker says, that we all at some point become aware of the inevitability of our own death because we are able to conceptualize alternate visions of reality. We are also the only animal capable of imagining a reality without ourselves in it. This realization causes what Becker calls death terror, a deep existential anxiety that underlies everything we think or do. Becker's second point starts with the premise that we essentially have two selves. The first self is the physical self, the one that eats, sleeps, snores, and poops. The second self is our conceptual self, our identity, or how we see ourselves. Becker's argument is this: we are all aware on some level that our physical self will eventually die, that this death is inevitable, that its inevitability on some unconscious level scares the shit out of us. Therefore, in order to compensate for our fear of the inevitable loss of our physical self, we try to construct a conceptual self that will live forever. This is why people try so hard to put their names on buildings, on statues, on spines of books. It's why we feel compelled to spend so much time giving ourselves to others, especially to children, in the hopes that our influence, our conceptual self will last way beyond our physical self, that we will be remembered and revered and idolized long after our physical self ceases to exist. Becker called such efforts our immortality projects that allow our conceptual self to live on way past the joint of our physical death. All of human civilization, it says, is basically a result of immortality projects. The cities and governments and structures and authorities in place today were all immortality projects of men and women who came before us. They are the remnants of conceptual self that ceased to die. Names like Jesus, Muhammad, Napoleon, and Shakespeare are just as powerful today as when those men lived, if not more so. And that's the whole point. Whether it be through mastering an art form, conquering a new land, gaining great riches, or simply having a large and loving family that will live on for generations, all the meaning in our life is shaped by this innate desire to never truly die. Religion, politics, sports, art, and technological innovation are the result of people immortality projects. Becker argues that wars and revolution and mass murder occur when one group of people's immortality projects rubs up against another group's. Centuries of oppression and the bloodshed of millions have been justified as the defense of one's group immortality project against another's. But when our immortality project fails, when the meaning is lost, when the prospect of our conceptual self outliving our physical self no longer seems possible or likely, death, terror, that horrible depressing anxiety creeps back into our mind. Trauma can cause this, as can shame and social ridicule, as can, as Becca points out, mental illness. If you haven't figured it out yet, our immortality projects our values. They are the barometers of meaning and worth in our life. And when our values fail, so do we, psychologically speaking. What Becker is saying, in essence, is that we are all driven by fear to give way too many fucks about something. Because giving a fuck about something is the only thing that distracts us from the reality and inevitability of our own death. And to truly not give a single fuck is to achieve a quasi spiritual state of embracing the impermanence of one's own existence. In that state, one is far less likely to get caught up in various forms of entitlement. Becker later came to a startling realization on his deathbed that people's immortality projects were actually the problem, not the solution. Rather than attempting to implement, often through lethal force, their conceptual self across the world, people should question their conceptual self and become more comfortable with the reality of their own death. Becker called this the bitter antidote and struggled with reconciling it himself as he stared down his own demise. While death is bad, it is inevitable. Therefore, we should not avoid this realization, but rather come to terms with it as best as we can, because once we become comfortable with the fact of our own death, the root terror, the underlying anxiety motivating all of life's frivolous ambitions, we can then choose our values more freely, unrestrained by the illogical quest for immortality, and freed from dangerous dogmatic views. The sunny side of death. I step from rock to rock, climbing steadily, leg muscles stretching and aching, in that trance like state that comes from slow, repetitive physical exertion. I am nearing the top. The sky gets wide and deep. I am alone now. My friends are far below me, taking pictures of the ocean. Finally, I climb over a small boulder and the view opens up. I can see from here to this infinite horizon. It feels as though I am starting at the edge of the earth, where water meets the sky, blue on blue. The wind screams across my skin. I look up. It's bright. It's beautiful. I am at South Africa's Cape of Good Hope, once thought to be at the southern tip of Africa and the southernmost point in the world. It's a tumultuous place, a place full of storms and treacherous waters, a place that's seen centuries of trade and commerce and human endeavor. a place ironically of lost hopes. There is a saying in Portuguese, "Ele dobra acabou da boa esperança." It means he is rounding the Cape of Good Hope. Ironically, it means that a person's life in its final phase that he is incapable of accomplishing anything more. I stepped across the rocks towards the blue, allowing its vastness to engulf my field of vision. I am sweaty yet cold, excited yet nervous. Is this it? The wind is slapping my ears. I hear nothing, but I see the edge where the rocks meet oblivion. I stop and stand for a moment, several yards away. I can see the ocean below, lapping and floating against cliffs stretching out for miles to either side. The tides are furious against the impenetrable walls. Straight ahead is a sheer drop of at least 50 yards to the water below. To my right, stories are dotted across the landscape below, snapping photos and aggregating themselves into ant-like formations. To my left is Asia. In front of me is the sky, and behind me is everything I've ever hoped for and brought with me. What if this is it? What if this is all there is? I look around, I am alone. I take my first step toward the edge of the cliff. The human body seems to come equipped with a natural radar for death and useless breath. For example, the moment you get within about 10 feet of a cliff edge, minus guardrail, a certain tension digs into your body. Your back stiffens, your skin ripples, your eyes become hyper-focused on every detail of your movement. Your feet feel as though they are made of rock. It's as if they are a big invisible magnet gently pulling your body back to safety. But if I fight the magnet, I drag the feet beneath made of rock closer to the edge. At 5 feet away, your mind joins the party. You can see not only the edge of the cliff, but down the cliff face itself, which induces all sorts of unwanted visualizations of tripping and falling and stumbling to a flashy death. It's really fucking far. Your mind reminds you like really fucking far, dude. What are you doing? Stop moving, stop it. I tell my mind to shut up and keep inching forward. At 3 feet, your body goes into a full scale red alert. You are now within an errant shoelace strip of your life ending. It feels as though every gust of wind is send you sailing up into that blue, bisected eternity. Your legs shake as your hands, as is your voice, in case you need to remind yourself you are not about to perish in your death. The 3 foot distance is most people absolutely miss. It's just close enough to lean forward and catch a glimpse of the bottom, but it's far enough to feel as though you are not at any real risk of killing yourself. Standing that close to the edge of a cliff, even what as beautiful as mesmerizing as the Cape of Good Hope induces a steady sense of vertigo and threatens to regurgitate any recent meal. Is this it? Is that all there is? Do I already know everything I will ever know? I take another micro step, then another. 2 feet now. My forward leg vibrates as I pull the weight of my body on it. I shuffle on. Against the magnet, against the mind, against all my better instincts for survival. 1 foot now, I am looking straight down the cliff face. I feel a sudden urge to cry. My body instinctively crouches, protecting itself against something imagined and inexplicable. The wind comes in hailstorms, the salt comes in right air. At 1 foot, you feel like you are floating. Anything but looking straight down feels as though you are part of the sky itself. You actually kind of expect to fall at this point. I crouched there for a moment, catching my breath and collecting my thoughts. I force myself to stare down at the water hitting the rocks below me. Then I look again to my right, at the little ants smiling about the signage below me, snapping photos, chasing tall buses, on the off chance that somebody somehow sees us. This desire, hmm, this desire for attention is wholly irrational, but so is all of this. It's impossible to make me out up here, of course, and even if it's wearing, there is nothing that those distant people could say or do All I hear is the wind. Is this it? My body shudders, and the fear of becoming euphoric and blinding. I focus my mind and clear my thoughts in a kind of meditation. Nothing makes you present and mindful like being mere inches away from your own death. I straighten up and look out again and find myself smiling. I remind myself that it's alright to die. This thrilling and even exuberant interfacing with one's own immortality as ancient roots, the Stoic of ancient Greece and Rome implored people to keep death in mind at all times, in order to appreciate life more and remain humble in the face of its adversities. In various forms of Buddhism, the practice of meditation is often taught as a means of preparing oneself for death while still remaining alive, dissolving one's ego into an expansive nothingness. Achieving the lightning state of nirvana is seen as a trial run of letting oneself cross to the other side. Even Mark Twain, that airy goofball who came in and left on Alice comments, said, "The fear of death follows from the fear of life. A man who lives fully is prepared to die at any time." Back on the cliff, I bent down, slightly leaned back. I put my hands on the ground behind me and gently lower myself onto my butt. I then gradually slide one leg over the edge of the cliff. There is a small rock jutting out of the cliff side. I rest my foot on it. Then I slide my other foot off the edge and put it on the same small rock. I sit there for a moment and leaning back on the same small rock. I sit there a moment, leaning back on my palms, wind ruffling my hair. The anxiety is bearable now, as long as I stay focused on the horizon. Then I sit up straight and look down the cliff again. Fear shoots back up through my spine, electrifying my limbs and laser focusing my mind on the exact coordinates of every inch of my body. The fear is stifling at times, but each time it stifles me, I empty my thoughts, focus my attention on the bottom of the cliff below me, force myself to gaze at my potential doom, and then to simply acknowledge its existence. I was now sitting on the edge of the world, at the southernmost tip of hope, the gateway to the east. The feeling was exhilarating. I can feel the adrenaline pumping through my body, being so still, so conscious, never felt so thrilling. I listened to the wind and watched the ocean and looked out upon the ends of the earth, and then I laughed for the light, all that it touches being good. Confronting the reality of our own mortality is important because it obliterates all the crappy, fragile, superficial values in life. While we most people think about their while most people to their days chasing another buck or a little bit more fame and attention or a little bit more assurance that they are right or loved, death confronts all of us with a far more painful and important question. What is your legacy? How will the world be different and better when you are gone? What mark will you have made? What influence will you have caused? They say that a butterfly flapping its wings in Africa can cause a hurricane in Florida. Well, what hurricanes will you leave in your wake? As Becca pointed out, this is arguably the only truly important question in your life. Yet we avoid thinking about it. One, because it's hard. Two, because it's scary. Three, because we haven't fucking clue what we are doing. And when we avoid this question, we let trivial and hateful values hijack our brains and take control of our desires and ambitions. Without acknowledging the ever present gaze of death, the superficial will appear important and the important will appear superficial. Death is the only thing we can know with any certainty, and as such, it must be the compass by which we orient all of our other values and decisions. It is the correct answer to all of the questions we should ask but never do. The only way to be comfortable with death is to understand and see yourself as something bigger than yourself, to choose values that stretch beyond mm-mm, to choose values that stretch beyond serving yourself, that are simple and immediate and controllable and tolerant of the chaotic world around you. This is the basic root of all happiness. Whether you are listening to Aristotle or the psychologists at Harvard or Jesus Christ or the goddamn Beatles, they all say that happiness comes from the same thing, caring about something greater than yourself, believing that you are a contributing component in so much larger entity, that your life is but a mere side process of some great unintelligible production. This feeling is what people go to church for. It's what they fight in wars for. It's what they raise families and save pensions and build bridges and invent cell phones for. This fleeting sense of being part of something greater than not of something greater and more unknowable than themselves. And entitlement strips this away from us. The gravity of entitlement sucks all attention inward toward ourselves, causing us to feel as though we are at the center of all the problems in the universe and that we are the one suffering. And that we are the ones suffering all of the injustices, that we are the one who deserve greatness over all others. As allowing as it is, entitlement isolates us. As allowing as it is, entitlement isolates us. Our curiosity and excitement for the world turns in upon itself and reflects our own biases and projections onto every person we meet and every event we experience. This feels sexy and enticing and may feel good for a while and sells a lot of tickets, but it's a spiritual poison. It's these dynamics that plague us now. We are so materially well off, yet so psychologically tormented in so many low level and shallow ways. People relinquish all responsibility, demanding that society cater to their feelings and sensibilities. People hold on to arbitrary certainties and try to enforce them on others, often violently in the name of some made up righteous cause. People high on the sense of false superiority fall into inaction and lethargy for fear of trying something worthwhile and failing at it. The pampering of the modern mind has resulted in a population that feels deserving of something without earning that something. A population that feels they have a right to something without sacrificing for it. People declare themselves experts, entrepreneurs, inventors, innovators, mavericks, and coaches without any real life experience. And they do this not because they actually think they are greater than everybody else. They do it because they feel that they need to be great to be accepted in a world that broadcasts only the extraordinary. Our culture today focuses great attention and great success, assuming them to be the same thing, but they are not. You are great already. Whether you realize it or not, whether anybody else realizes it or not. And it's not because you launched an iPhone app or finished school a year early or bought yourself a sweet ass boat. These things do not define greatness. You are already great because, in the face of endless confusion and certain death, you continue to choose what to give a fuck about and what not to. This mere fact, this simple option for your own values in life, already makes you beautiful, already makes you successful, and already makes you loved even if you don't realize it. Even if you are sleeping in a gutter and starving, you are going to die, and that's because you too were fortunate enough to have lived. You may not feel this, but go stand on a cliff sometimes and maybe you will. Bukowski once wrote, "We are all going to die, all of us. What a circus." That alone should make us love each other, but it doesn't. We are terrorized and flattened by life's trivialities. We are eaten up by nothing. Looking back on that night, out by that lake, when I watched my friend Josh's body getting fished out of the lake by paramedics, I remember staring into black Texas night and watching my ego slowly dissolve into it. Yes, Josh's death taught me much more than I initially realized. Yes, it helped me to seize the day, to take responsibility for my choices, and to pursue my dreams with less shame and inhibition. But these were side effects of a deeper, more primary lesson. And the primary lesson was this: there is nothing to be afraid of, ever. And reminding myself of my own death repeatedly over the years, whether it be through meditation, through reading philosophy, or through doing crazy shit like standing on a cliff in South Africa, is the only thing that has helped me hold this realization front and center in my mind. This acceptance of my death, this understanding of my own fragility, has made everything easier. Untangling my addictions, identifying and confronting my own entitlement, accepting responsibility for my own problems, suffering through my fears and uncertainties, accepting my failures and embracing rejections. It has all been made lighter by the thought of my own death. The more I peer into the darkness, the brighter life gets. The quieter the world becomes, and the less unconscious resistance I feel to, well, anything. I sit there on the cape for a few minutes, taking in everything. When I finally decide to get up, I put my hands behind me and scoot back. Then slowly, I stand. I check the ground around me, making sure there is no errant rock ready to sabotage me. Having recognized that I am safe, I begin to walk back to reality. 5 feet, 10 feet, my body restoring itself with each step. My feet become lighter. I let my magnets draw me in. As I step back over some rocks, back to the main part, I look up to see a man staring at me. I stop and make eye contact with him. I saw you sitting on the edge over there, he says. His accent was Australian. The word there rose out of his mouth awkwardly. He points towards Atlantica. Yeah, the view is gorgeous, isn't it? I am smiling. He is not. He has a serious look on his face. I brush my hands off my shirt and my body still buzzing from my surrender. There is an awkward silence. He also stands for a moment, perplexed, still looking at me, clearly thinking of what to say next. After a moment, he carefully pieces his words together. Is everything okay? How are you feeling? I pause for a moment, still smiling, alive, very alive. His skepticism breaks and reveals a smile in his place, gives a slight nod, and heads down the trail. I stand above, taking in the view, waiting for my friends to arrive on the peak. And that's the end of the subtle art of not giving a fuck. So I'll be reading out the acknowledgements. This book began as a big, messy thing and required more than just my own hands to chisel something compressible out of it. First and foremost, thank you to my brilliant and beautiful wife, Fernanda, who never hesitates to say no to me when I need to hear it most. Not only do you make me a better person, but your unconditional love and constant feedback during the writing process were indispensable. To my parents, for putting up with my shit all these years and continuing to love me anyway. In many ways, I don't feel as though I fully became an adult until I understood many of the concepts in this book. In that sense, it's been a joy to get to know you as an adult these past few years, and to my brother as well. I never doubt the existence of mutual love and respect between us, even if I sometimes get but all that you don't text me back. To Philip Kemper and Drew Bynning, two big brains that actually conspire to make my brain appear much larger than it actually is. Your hard work and brilliance continue to floor me. To Michael Covell, for being my intellectual stress test, especially when it comes to understanding psychological research, and for always challenging me on my assumptions. To my editor, Luke Dempsey, for mercilessly tightening the screws on my writing and for possibly having an even fouler mouth than I do. To my agent, Modeglick, for helping me divine the vision for the book and pushing it much further into the world. than I ever expected to see it go. To Taylor Pearson, Dan Andrews, and Judith Ettenberg for their support during the process. You three kept me both accountable and sane, which are the only two things every writer needs. And finally, to the millions of people who, for whatever reasons, decided to read a potty-mouthed asshole from Boston writing about life on his blog, the flood of emails I've received from those of you willing to open up the most intimate corners of your life to me, a complete stranger, both humbles me and inspires me. At this point in my life, I've spent thousands of hours reading and studying this subject, but you all continue to be my true education. Thank you. Uh, well, this I'm yet to read, not to give reviews. Done with this. Now, moving on to why you act the way you do. What they've learned from it. Okay, as the author has acknowledged everyone that has been instrumental in the success of this book, I'll also be acknowledging and thanking everyone that read this book with me. Thank you all so much. You all didn't make me feel tired of reading it. Thank you for reading with me, and I would like to hear what you think about it in comments. Like, let me know what you think of it, and did you enjoy it? Just let me know. So we'll be moving on to the next book, Why You Act the Way You Do. This is a book written by Tim LaHaye, and it explains his unique theory of temperament blends and tells how you can improve yourself by identifying your own personality strengths and weaknesses. Learning why you act the way you do will help you in four ways. One, it will advance you in your job and career. Two, it will enable you to deal with depression and anger. Three, it will improve your relationship with your spouse or help you select your future husband or wife. 4, it will identify for you the specific spiritual gifts God has given you. So even if you've never before read about personality and temperament, why you act the way you do will help you discover your unique potential in your job, your marriage, and your church. Dr. Tim LaHaye 21 books, including Spirit Controlled Temperament and Transformed Temperament. A popular speaker on family, life, and prophecy, he currently serves as an associate pastor at the Prestonwood Baptist Church of Dallas, where his family enrichment class is transmitted live via satellite to many churches each Sunday. He is president of the American Coalition for Traditional Values in Washington. So, analyze your strengths and weaknesses, discover how God can use your gifts, improve your relationship with others, and then get ahead in your career. Let's dive into it. Temperament influences everything you do, from sleep habits to study habits to eating style to the way you get along with other people. Humanly speaking, there is no other influence in your life more powerful than your temperament or combination of temperaments. That is why it is so essential to know your temperament and to be able to analyze other people's temperaments, not to condemn them, but so you can maximize your potential and enable them to maximize theirs. Okay, so this book is divided into 6 parts. We have part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and then part 6. Part 1 is about the power of temperament. Part 2, what temperament are you? Part 3, temperament and your vocation. Part 4, temperament and your emotions. Part 5, temperament in love and marriage. And then part 6, temperament and your spiritual life. So, let's dive in. Part 1, the power of temperament. Temperament influences everything you do. When I was in high school, there was a pair of identical twins in my class. We could hardly tell them apart. They tested out identically on their IQ scores, 128, but that is where the similarities stopped. One was personable, the other withdrew from people. One loved sports, history, and literature. The other preferred maths, physics, and language. Interesting to me was the fact that their grade points averages were almost identical and at the end of their 4 years in high school. Yes, they did not get the same grades in most subjects. What made the difference between these young men? Their temperament. Temperament influences everything you do, from sleep habits, study habits, to eating style, to the way you get along with other people. Humanly speaking, there is no other influence in your life more powerful than your temperament or combination of temperaments. That is why it is so essential to know your temperament and to be able to analyze other people's temperaments, not to condemn them, but so you can maximize your potential and enable them to maximize theirs. Sit with me in the counseling room and you will see what I mean. The sanguine talks about the weather, friends, and a hundred of things before facing the real problem. The choleric get right to the point. He or she wants you to straighten out his partner so he can have a good home life. The melancholy sighs deeply as he sits down with depression, self pity, and unhappiness etched on his face. The phlegmatic rarely gets around to making an appointment, and when she does, it takes most of the first hour just to prime a conversational pump. These people are not the temperament they are because they do these things. Rather, they act the way they do because of their temperament. Some of our acts are subtle, like tastes or preferences, while others involve outlooks and attitudes or even styles of thinking. There is hardly a function in life that is not influenced by temperament. Thus, you had better determine your temperament and consistently direct it into the best lifestyle for you and your family. Otherwise, your temperament will subconsciously direct you. Temperament and eating habits. I can almost judge a man's temperament by his eating habits. Sanguines eat everything in sight and usually look it. In a restaurant, they so enjoy talking that they almost never look at a menu until the waitress arrives. Cholerics, stereotype eaters, seldom vary their menu from one day to the next, and when it arrives, they bolt it down in big chunks. And when it, and often talking while sharing their food. Melancholies are very picky eaters. It takes them forever to make up their minds about what to order, but once it arrives, they savor every bite. Phlegmatics are the most deliberate eaters of all and are invariably the last ones through eating. That is the main reason they rarely gain weight. All weight specialists warn obese patients to eat slowly, for it takes 20 minutes for food passing into the mouth to shut off hunger pangs. Then we have temperament and driving skills. Sanguines are erratic drivers. Sometimes they speed, then for no apparent reason lose interest in driving fast and slow down. They are so people oriented that they want to look you in the face when talking, even while driving. Colleagues are daring speed demons who dart in and out of traffic constantly. They always try to get more accomplished in a given period of time than is humanly possible, and that's make up by driving furiously between appointments. Melancholic motorists never leave home without preparing for the trip well in advance. They study the map and know the best route from A to Z. Of all the temperament, they are the most likely to keep a complete log of their driving history, including gas and oil consumption about car repairs. Legalists by nature, they rarely speed. Phlegmatic is the slowest driver of all, the last one to leave an intersection. He rarely changes lane and is an indecisive danger when joining the flow of freeway traffic from an entrance ramp. He is a pokey Sunday driver, 7 days a week. He gets few tickets and rarely has accidents, but it can be a road hazard. And then temperament and the way you shop. Sanguines are not price conscious, but select for visual satisfaction. They are drawn by colorful packaging and advertising. In the grocery store, theirs is the most overloaded cart. Cholerics, particularly men, are not fond of shopping. They only go to the store when they need something and want to purchase it and get out. Like sanguines, they usually overbuy but not quite as much. Melancholies are deliberate and decisive shoppers who compare prices and quality quite carefully. They run their hands over the item, try it on one or two, three times, give the store a time or two, and if it isn't sold by the time they return, they buy it. They create traffic jams waiting to make up their mind. In the grocery store, they can save all the coupons from every manufacturer. Phlegmatics, particularly women, enjoy shopping. They take longer, shop slower, and are probably more frugal than type. They are almost as indecisive as the melancholy. They have to shop more frequently than any other type because they don't get enough on their first trip. And then we have temperament and yard care. As incredible as it may seem, you can almost decipher a person's temperament by the way he does the yard work around his home. Sparky Spanglins gets up Saturday morning to fix his yard. With great gusto, he lines up all his tools. He has every gadget known to man because it totally lacks sales resistance and prepares to cut, trim, shear, and prune. However, within 30 minutes, he is chatting joyfully with a neighbor. Before the day is over, he orders his son to put my tools away and decides to fix the yard the next week. Sparky is clearly one of world's great procrastinators. Um, Rocky choleric hates yard work, and therefore when he does it at all, it is with a vengeance. He works at a frenzied pace in order to get the job done, and neatness is not his hallmark. One can usually spot the choleric's yard while driving through the neighborhood. Just look for miniature edges and dwarf trees. Martin Melancholy has a natural aptitude for growing things and usually maintains the best yard in the neighborhood. He is the one who talks to and babies his plants, and on almost any weekend we'll find him on hands and knees manicuring his lawns and edges. The phlegmatic's lawn usually suggests that its owner is still in the house late on a Saturday morning, sipping his third cup of coffee because he is capable of superior lawn care. Phil will scrupulously attend to the old plantation, however, his desire to rest is overcome by his drive to do the accepted thing. And then we have temperament and study habits. Melancholics are usually good students who enjoy learning. They have inquisitive mind, and if taught to read well, we have a ferocious appetite for books. They are blessed with keen retentive minds that enable them to remember a multitude of details. As a rule, they are good spellers because they take mental pictures of each word. Although they have a messy file and a desktop that is impossible to organize, they have an amazing concentration regardless of the mess, interruptions, or noise going on around them. Phlegmatics can be good students if their procrastination doesn't catch up with them. They need a series of short-term assignments rather than long-term projects. They work best under pressure, though they claim they don't like it. They have orderly minds capable of analysis and deductions. They are prone to get their news more TV than magazines and newspapers. They have good memories and can be intelligent people if somehow motivated to learn. Colorists are clever as a rule but not brilliant. They like the people oriented subjects such as history, geography, literature, and psychology. They may not be good spellers, but they skim over things so quickly. They are depth at speed reading and have curious mind. They constantly ask why. Cholerics love charts, diagrams, and graphs. They like to know where everything fits the main scheme of things. They may have a difficult time concentrating on anything that reminds them. They may have a difficult time concentrating on anything that reminds them of other goals or projects that get their minds off on the tangent, and then may have a difficult time getting back to the subject at hand. Sanguines, unless endowed with a high IQ, are not usually good students. They can be if they are motivated because they are often bright enough, but they are very restless and undisciplined. They have a short interest span, and anything can be a distraction, from a bird flying overhead to a picture on the wall. These people have incredible potential but usually squander it because they don't discipline themselves. Concentration for long periods of time is difficult for them. Then we have handwriting and your temperament. I am not an authority on handwriting, but I have observed that temperament and handwriting analysis are very similar. Our penmanship usually follows our temperament. Everything a sanguine does is expressive and flamboyant, and he writes that way. The choleric usually has poor handwriting. Everything it does is fast. Consequently, it does not take time to write legibly. The phlegmatic usually has small but neat handwriting. Melancholics have the most unpredictable handwriting of all. They are extremely complex people and usually write that way. Communication skills and temperament. Thinking skills and communication skills are not based solely on the brain. They also involve temperament. Sanguines are intuitive speakers. They are overly expressed and use exaggeration freely. Cholerics are extroverted enough to speak freely, but usually are more deliberate than sanguines. They are debaters and arguers. No one can be more biting or sarcastic. Melancholies never start talking until they have thought out precisely what they want to say. They don't like to interrupt others, but once they get started, they go on until they have unloaded their entire message. Phlegmatics are quiet about everything and seldom enter into debate or thrust themselves into conversations. They will respond to questions with weight and good humor, but rarely volunteer anything unless asked. Peter was told, "Your speech betrays you." That is often true of your temperament. Your speech patterns are a giveaway of your temperament. Bill paying and temperament. Paying bills is a necessary part of life, and it seems to get more complex all the time. Believe it or not, unless you are a trained bookkeeper, the way you tackle that problem will be a reflection of your temperament. Sanguines are terrible record keepers. They dislike detail and can get momentarily depressed with their overspending habits. Their method of handling deficit spending is rarely to cut down on their standard of living, but simply to try to make more money. They pay their bills, but it usually takes several reminders. Following like to pay bills on time. They aren't very detailed, unless they have a melancholy or phlegmatic secondary temperament, but they like things orderly. Their style is to put all the bills in one place and pay them all the same night each month. They aren't bugged if their checkbook doesn't balance, just so they keep the bank honest. For $5 or $10, they will accept the bank's balance. They figure their time spent hassling over the details is more worth than that. Melancholists are perfectionists. Their conscientious nature makes them difficult to live with if they don't pay all their creditors on time. Their bill cabinet is a mess, but they know what each statement and receipt is. They usually have every receipt for the past 5 years, but in no set order. They pride themselves on balancing their checkbooks to the penny. If there is a mistake, it will be the banks. They usually have a triple A credit rating. Phlegmatics systemize everything. They have a detailed budget and keep matching records. They not only pay bills on time, they like to get them in early wherever it saves an additional 2 or 4%. Sanguines don't even realize there are companies that do this. So some pledge, balancing their checkbook is the highlight of their month. It's one clear sign that their life is in order and they are ready to launch into the next month. Child discipline and your temperament. Child discipline is largely a result of family tradition, religious training, culture, and temperament. In recent years, there have been a number of books written on this subject, some good, some very harmful. Those who base their philosophy on humanistic values or humanistic psychology have produced a permissive society that tends toward lawlessness. Books based on biblical principles have, on the other hand, been very valuable. My three favorite books on child disciplines are two by my friend Dr. James Dobson, Dare to Discipline and the Stronghold Child, and one by my wife Beverly, How to Develop Your Child's Temperament. These three books should be in every Christian parent's library. If you study them, you will be equipped to be a maximum parent. Having said all of that, however, You will find that unless you learn what is right in disciplining your children, you will respond to them according to your temperament. Consider having according to your temperament. Even when you know what to do, your temperament will influence the way you do it. Consider these four family styles. Everything a sanguine does in life is spontaneous, and discipline is usually no exception. He is loud in his instruction and correction, and a woman sanguine is apt to be a screamer. Since sanguines them are not disciplined themselves, their threats are rarely carried out. So Johnny knows he never has to answer the first time he is called or told to do something. He waits until the pitch of the scream or the volume of the call gets to a certain intensity before he comes on. When it comes to spankings, sanguines must do it immediately. While they are angry or frustrated, or they probably won't do it at all. Their tender hearts and forgiving spirits make delayed punishment no punishment. Their leniency leads to permissiveness, which in turn encourages lawlessness. And inconsistent parents usually raise inconsistent children. One thing is commendable about sanguines. After they have disciplined their children, they take time to love and comfort them. Sanguines never carry grudges. We could all do that with a bit of that. Another thing about these fun-loving people is that they will often take time to play with their children, particularly as they got older. Cholerics, being authority prone, wants to run their own like a marine boot camp. This may produce good robots, but it doesn't do much for kids. The child of a choleric parent The child of a choleric parent never lacks knowledge of what his parent requires in the way of obedience and rules. He is told regularly. Cholerics love to give out orders. Choleric spankers tend to spank too hard, too often, and too many spanks per discipline. Masters of the overkill in all that they do, their motto is if a little helps, a lot will cure. In reality, no parent should spank a child when angry. It makes the child feel it's just a release valve for the parent's frustration. Cholerics can be good parents, but they have to work at it. They are hard to please at best, and if a child is a late bloomer or if of a less activist temperament, such parents are apt to make her feel inferior and constantly disapproved. Such parents need to encourage their children, approve them, and build up their self-image, going out of their way to show their love. Melancholy parents were perfectionists before they became parents, and having children won't change that. They have high to unreal expectations for their young and dole out praise sparingly. Although most children need it lavishly, academically their children know that anything less than an A is a failure in every subject. Legalistic by nature, they usually have rules for everything and procedures that must be followed. If they say they will spank for a particular offense, they usually follow through, but rarely do they overspank unless they see their own shortcomings in their child. Then they may take out on the child the frustrations they have toward themselves. It is hard for melancholists to be approving because their standard is so high and because they are afraid their child will become complacent with approval. They are the last temperament to learn that everyone needs praise and that most people thrive better on approval than on condemnation. They have a great capacity. They have a great capacity to love their children, but they need to learn how to express it. One One of the biggest parental failings is that they never forget anything wrong the child has done, and if not trained out of habit, will bring it up again and again. Phlegmatics can be good parents if they learn to be. Phlegmatics can be good parents if they learn to be more assertive and confrontational when necessary. They are patience personified. Uh, they love children and probably feel more comfortable with little children than anyone else. They take time with them, play with them, and can be patient trainers. As choleric children get older, phlegmatic parents may be intimidated by them and look the other way, thus undermining in the teen years they gave in childhood. Phlegmatic can be good parents if they learn to be more assertive and confrontational when necessary. They are patience personified. They love children and probably feel more comfortable with little children than anyone else. They take time with them, play with them, and can be patient trainers. As choleric children get older, phlegmatic parents may be intimidated by them and look the other way, thus undermining in the teen years the good training they gave in childhood. However, the one thing they may indulge in, melancholies can be guilty of this also, is to permit their children to sass them. No parent should accept this. The Bible says children are to honor their parents. If they don't honor them with their mouth, they must at least be forced not to dishonor them. Parents who lose that battle in childhood seldom gain control in the teen years. The phlegmatic is the least likely to spank. He usually waits until the more extroverted parent does it. When the teen years come and the child needs a forceful father figure, it is sad when dad goes to the garage and potters at his workbench to avoid unpleasant confrontations. I once counseled a phlegmatic man whose conflict with his wife arose because she wouldn't forbid the kids to watch certain TV shows he felt were objectionable. Children need two parents to agree on rules and to enforce them. Applying whatever punishment is appropriate or promise. Phlegmatics can be good parents, but like the rest of us, they have to work at it. So the summary, we could go on giving illustrations of how temperament influences the way you exercise, sleep, decorate, select clothes, have hobbies, and do everything else in your life. But these are enough to get you started in the right direction. As you become more familiar with the temperament theory, you will see it at work in your own life and that of a friend. Why you act the way you do. Everyone is interested in human behavior. That is why over 80% of our nation's 13 million college students voluntarily take psychology classes. They are fascinated by what makes people tick, and most of all, they are interested in why they think, feel, respond, explode, and act the way they do. Nothing answers those questions better than the theory of the four temperaments. It explains differences in people, their tastes, their creative capabilities, their strengths and weaknesses. It explains why some people conflict with others and why others are attracted to each other. Temperament, you are born with it. Humanly speaking, nothing has a more profound influence on your behavior than your inherited temperament. The combination of your parents' genes and chromosomes at conception, which determined by basic temperaments 9 months before you do your first breath, is largely responsible for your actions, reactions, emotional responses, and to one degree or another, almost everything you do. Most importantly, most people are completely unaware of this extremely powerful influence on their behavior. Consequently, instead of cooperating with it and using it, they conflict with this inner power and often try to make something. Instead of cooperating with it and using it, they conflict with this inner power and often try to make something of themselves that they were never intended to be. This not only limits them personally but affects their immediate family and often spoils other interpersonal relationships. It is one of the reasons so many people say, I don't like myself or I can't find myself. When a person discovers his own basic temperament, he can usually figure out rather easily what vocational opportunities he is best suited for, how to get along with other people, what natural weaknesses to watch for, what kind of wife he should marry, and how he can improve the effectiveness of his life. What is temperament? Temperament is the combination of traits we inherited from our parents. No one knows where it resides, but I think it is somewhere in the mind or emotional center, often referred to as the heart. From that source, it combines with other human characteristics to produce our basic makeup. Most of us are more conscious of its expression than we are its function. It is a person's temperament that makes him outgoing and extroverted or shy and extroverted. Doubtless you knows both kinds of people who were born to the same parents. Similarly, it is temperament that makes some people art and music enthusiasts, while others are sports or industry minded. In fact, I have met outstanding musicians who simply were tone deaf. Temperament is not the only influence upon our behavior, of course. Early home life, training, education, and motivation also exercise powerful influences on our actions throughout life. Temperament is, however, the number one influence on a person's life, not only because it is the first thing that affects us, but because, like body structure, color of eyes, and other physical characteristics, it escorts us through. An extrovert is an extrovert. He may tone down the expression of his extroversion, but he will always be an extrovert. Similarly, although an extrovert may be able to come out of his shell and act more aggressively, it will never be transformed into an extrovert. Temperament sets broad guidelines on everyone's behavior, patterns that will influence a person as long as he lives. On one side are his strengths, on the other are his weaknesses. The primary advantage to learning about the four basic temperaments is to discover your most pronounced strengths and weaknesses so that with God's help you can overcome your weaknesses and take advantage of your strengths. In this way, you can fulfill your personal destiny to the maximum. Temperament is passed on through the genes and no doubt was influenced by the Adamic fall. That is why we all identify with the desire to do good, while at the same time we possess a desire to do evil. The Apostle Paul no doubt felt that same way when he said, "For to will is present with me, but how to perform from that which is good I find not. For the good I would do not, but the evil which I would not that I do. Now if I do that I would not, it is no more that I do it, but sin that dwelleth in me." Paul differentiated between himself and that uncontrollable force within by saying, "It is no more that I do it, but sin that dwelleth in me." The I is Paul's person, the soul, will, and mind of man. The sin that dwelleth in him was the human nature that he, like all human beings, inherited from his parents. This basic nature that we have all inherited from our parents is called several things in the Bible: the natural man, the flesh, the old man, and corruptible flesh, to name a few. It provides the basic impulses of our being as we seek to satisfy our wants. To properly understand its control of our actions and reactions, we should distinguish carefully between temperament, character, and personality. Temperament is the combination of inborn traits that subconsciously affects man's behavior. These traits are arranged genetically on the basis of nationality, race, sex, and other hereditary factors. These traits are passed on by the genes. Some psychologists suggest that we get more genes from our grandparents than our parents. That could account for the greater resemblance of some children to their grandparents than to their parents. The alignment of temperament traits is just as unpredictable as the color of eyes, hair, or size of the body. Character is the real you. The Bible refers to it as the hidden man of the earth. It is the result of a natural temperament modified by childhood training, education, basic attitude, beliefs, principles, and motivations. It is sometimes referred to as the soul of man, which is made up of the mind, emotions, and will. Personality is the outward expression of ourselves, which may or may not be the same as our character, depending on how genuine we are. Often, personality is a pleasing facade for an unpleasant or weak character. Many people go through life acting a part on the basis of what they think they should be or how they want people to see them rather than as they really are. This is a formula for mental and spiritual chaos. It is caused by following the human formula for acceptable conduct, which places the emphasis on externals. The Bible tells us man looks on the outward appearance, but God looks on the heart. And out of the heart proceeds the issue of life. The place to change behavior is inside man, not outside. In summary, temperament is a combination of traits we are born with. Character is our civilized temperament, and personality is the face we show to others. Since temperament traits are received genetically from our parents and hence are unpredictable, one should keep in mind some of the factors that influence temperament. Nationality and race probably plays the most significant part in formulating one's inherited temperament. While on a missionary tour to Mexico, I noticed the vast differences in the tribes that I observed. One tribe of Indians impressed me greatly. Many tribes have been shiftless, indifferent, and careless in their mode of life. These people, however, were a very industrious and often ingeniously capable tribe. In one city we visited, they were actively pursuing the technical trade of weaving, and their sense of responsibility was in sharp contrast to anything we had observed in other tribesmen. The skills were learned, but adaptability and desire to learn were so universal throughout the tribe that it could only be an inherited trait. A person's sex will also affect temperament, particularly in the realm of emotions. Women are usually considered to be more emotionally expressive than men. Even the hardest of women will weep at times. We have some men never weep. Temperament traits, whether controlled or uncontrolled, last throughout life. The older we get, however, the softer and more mellow our harsh and hard traits tend to become. Man learns that if he is to live at peace with his fellow man, it is best to emphasize his natural strengths and subdue his weaknesses. Many are successful in developing their character and improving their personality, but comparatively few are able to change their temperament. It is possible, however, to so modify your temperament that you seem like an entirely different person. To do so, however, requires outside help, and that will be addressed thoroughly in a later chapter. But first, we should meet the four temperaments. But before we meet the four temperaments, oh gosh, I read something here now that is of concern to me. Man learns that if he is to live at peace with his fellow man, it is best to emphasize his natural strengths and subdue his weaknesses. Well, life must be really tough for a man. Women are usually considered to be more emotionally expressive than men. Even the hardest of women will weep at times. We have some men never weep. Like, for real. Are there guys that have never wept before? Like, for real. So how do they express their emotions? Like, I feel bad for them. What do you mean you've never wept? It's just like saying you've never laughed. Oh, dog. Cry sometimes. It's needed. You feel good. Then we have meet the four temperaments. The art of the temperament theory, as first conceived by Hippocrates over 2400 years ago, divides people into four basic categories, which he named sanguine, choleric, melancholy, and phlegmatic. Each temperament type has both strengths and weaknesses that form a distinct part of his makeup throughout life. Once a person diagnoses his own basic temperament, he is better equipped to ascertain what vocational opportunities he is best suited for and what natural weaknesses he must work on to keep from short-circuiting his potential and creativity. The temperament chart on page 31 summarizes these strengths and weaknesses, revealing several of each per temperament. The following brief descriptions of the four basic temperaments will introduce you to these four different types of people. No doubt you will identify several of your friends in one or another of these classifications, and if you look carefully, you may even discover one that reminds you of yourself. Meet Spanky Sanguine. Spanky Sanguine. The Spanky Sanguine is a warm, buoyant, lively, and enjoying person, receptive by nature. External impressions easily find their way to his heart, where they cause an outburst of response. Feelings rather than reflective thoughts predominate to form his decisions. Sparky is so outgoing, he is usually considered a super extrovert. Mr. Sanguine has an unusual capacity for enjoying himself and usually passes on his fun-loving spirit. The moment he enters a room, he tends to lift the spirits of everyone present by his exuberant conversation. He is a fascinating storyteller, and his warm emotional nature almost helps you relive the experience as he tells it. Mr. Sanguine never lacks for friends. He can genuinely feel the joys and sorrows of the person he meets and has the capacity to make him feel important, as though he were a very special friend. And he is, as long as he is looking at you. Then he fixes his eyes with equal intensity on the next person he meets. The Apostle Peter in the Bible was much like Sparky Sanguine. Every time he appeared in the gospel, he was talking. In fact, I read through the gospels one time to verify my suspicion and found out that Simon Peter talked more than all the other disciples put together. That is typical for Sparky. As my sanguine minister friend Ken Cross said, a sanguine always enters a room mouth first. His noisy, blustering, friendly ways make him appear more confident than he really is. But his energy and lovable disposition got him by the rough spots of life. People have a way of excusing his weaknesses by saying, that's just the way it is. Meet Rocky Choleric. Rocky Choleric is hot, quick, active, practical, strong-willed, self-sufficient, and very independent. It tends to be decisive and opinionated, finding it easy to make decisions both for himself and other people. Like Sparky Sanguine, Rocky Choleric is an extrovert but is not nearly so intensive. Mr. Choleric thrives on activity. He does not need to be stimulated by his environment, but rather stimulates his environment with his endless ideas, plans, goals, and ambitions. He does not engage in aimless activity, for he has a practical keen mind capable of making sound, instant decisions or planning worthwhile projects. He does not vacillate under the pressure of what others think, but takes a definite stand on issues and can often be found crusading against some social injustice or subversive situation. Rocky is not frightened by adversities, in fact, they tend to encourage him. His dogged determination usually follows him to succeed where others have failed. Mr. Coller's emotional nature is the least developed part of his temperament. He does not sympathize easily with others, nor does he naturally show or express compassion. He is often embarrassed or disgusted by the tears of others and is usually insensitive to their needs. He reflects little appreciation for music and the fine arts, unless his secondary temperament traits are those of melancholy. He invariably seeks utilitarian and productive values in life, not given to analysis but rather to quick, almost intuitive appraisal. The choleric tends to look at the goal for which he is working without recognizing the potential pitfalls and obstacles in the path. Once he has started towards his goal, he may run roughshod over individuals who stand in his way. He tends to be domineering and fussy and does not hesitate to use people to accomplish his ends. He is often considered an opportunist. Meet Martin Melancholy. Martin Melancholy is the richest of all the temperaments. He is an analytical, self-sacrificing, gifted perfectionist style with a very sensitive emotional nature. No one gets more enjoyment from the fine arts than the melancholy. By nature, he is prone to be an introvert. But since his feelings predominate, he is given to a variety of moods. Sometimes they will lift him to heights. Sometimes they will lift him to heights of ecstasy that cause him to act more extroverted. However, at other times it will be gloomy and depressed, and during these periods it becomes withdrawn and can be quite antagonistic. Martin is a very faithful friend, but unlike the sanguine, he does not make friends easily. He seldom pushes himself towards forward to meet people, but rather lets them come to him. He is perhaps the most dependable of all the temperaments, for his perfectionist and conscientious tendencies do not permit him to be a shaker or let others down when they are counting on him. His reticence to put himself forward is often taken as an indication that he doesn't enjoy people. Like the rest of us, he not only likes others but has a strong desire to be loved by them, but finds it difficult to express his true feelings. Disappointing experiences make him reluctant to take people at face value. Thus, he is prone to suspicious when others seek him out or shower him with attention. His exceptional analytical ability causes him to diagnose accurately the obstacles and dangers of any project he has a part in planning. This is in sharp contrast to the choleric, who rarely anticipates problems or difficulties but is confident he can cope with whatever crisis may arise. Such a characteristic often finds the melancholy reticent to initiate some new project or in conflict with those who wish to do so. Occasionally, in a mood of emotional ecstasy or inspiration, it may produce some great work of art or genius. But these accomplishments are often followed by periods of great depression. Martin melancholy usually finds his greatest meaning in life through personal sacrifice. He seems desirous of making himself suffer, and he will often choose a difficult life vocation involving great personal sacrifice. But once it is chosen, he is prone to be very thorough and persistent in his pursuit of it, and more than likely will accomplish great good if his natural tendency to gripe throughout the sacrificial process doesn't get him so depressed that he gives up on it altogether. No temperament has so much natural potential when energized by the Holy Spirit as the melancholy. Meet Philip Phlegmatic. Philip Phlegmatic is the calm, easygoing, never get upset individual with such a high boiling point that he almost never becomes angry. He is the easiest type of person to get along with and is by nature the most likable of all temperaments. Philip Phlegmatic derives his name from what Hippocrates thought was the body fluid that produces that calm, cool, slow, well balanced temperament. Life for him is a happy, unexcited, pleasant experience in which he avoids as much involvement as possible. He is so calm and unruffled that he never seems agitated, no matter what circumstances surround him. He is the one temperament that is consistent every time you see him. Beneath his cool, reticent, almost timid personality, Mr. Phlegmatic has a very capable combination of abilities. He feels more emotion than appears on the surface and appreciates the fine arts and the beautiful things of life. Usually, he avoids violence. The phlegmatic does not lack for friends because he enjoys people and has a natural, dry sense of humor. He is the type of individual who can have a crowd of people he stitches. yet never cracks a smile. Possessing the unique capability for seeing something humorous in others and the things they do, it maintains a positive approach to life. He has a good retentive mind and is capable of being a fine imitator. Phlegmatic tends to be a spectator in life and tries not to get very involved with the activities of others. In fact, it is usually with great reluctance that he is ever motivated to any form of activity beyond his daily routine. This does not mean, however, that he cannot appreciate the need for action and the predicament of others. He and Rocky Choleric may confront the same social injustice, but their responses will be entirely different. The crusading spirit of the choleric will cause him to explain, let's get a committee organized and campaign to do something about this. The phlegmatic would likely respond, these conditions are terrible. Why doesn't someone do something about them? Usually kind hearted and sympathetic, phlegmatic seldom conveys his true feelings. When once aroused to action, however, his capable and efficient qualities become apparent. He will not volunteer to leadership on his own, but when it is forced upon him, he proves to be a very worthy, capable leader. He has a conciliating effect on others and is a natural peacemaker. Four basic temperament charts. Now that you have been briefly introduced to the four basic temperaments, you should study the above chart, which includes 10 strengths and 10 weaknesses for each temperament. Sanguine. The strengths include outgoing, responsive, warm and friendly, talkative, enthusiastic, compassionate. Their weaknesses include undisciplined, emotionally unstable, unproductive, egocentric, exaggerate. Choleric. Their strengths include strong-willed, independent, visionary, practical, productive, decisive leader. The weaknesses include cold and unemotional, self-sufficient, impetuous, domineering, unforgiving, sarcastic, angry, or cruel. Melancholy. The strengths include gifted, analytical, aesthetic, self-sacrificing, industrious, self-disciplined. Weaknesses include moody, self-centered, persecution-prone, revengeful, touchy, theoretical, unsociable, critical, negative. Phlegmatic. Their strength includes calm, quiet, easygoing, dependable, objective, diplomatic, efficient, organized, practical, humorous. Phlegmatic weaknesses include unmotivated, procrastinator, selfish, stingy, self-protective, indecisive, fearful, warrior. And summary, which are you? There you have it. In just few pages, we have presented the centuries-old theory of the four basic temperaments. I said basic because no one is 100% sanguine, choleric, melancholy, or phlegmatic. We are all a combination of at least two or perhaps three temperaments. More on that intriguing subject later. However, your predominant or basic temperament, the one that influences you the most, should not be too difficult to diagnose. Just ask yourself a few questions while looking at the following illustrations. Are you an extrovert? If so, if you are predominantly sanguine or choleric. 2. If yes to one, ask yourself, do I lean towards being a super extrovert? That is, are you generally the first to speak? If so, you are a sanguine. If yes to one, ask yourself if you are a good salesman type. If so, you are predominantly sanguine. If yes to one but no to 2 and 3, and ask, am I a strong natural leader? If so, you are probably a choleric. If you answered no to one, that is, you are not an extrovert, then ask yourself, am I a perfectionist, analytical, and somewhat critical? If so, you are probably predominantly melancholy. If you answered no to one, ask yourself if you are known by others as very quiet. Do you really get angry but experience many fears and worries? If so, you are probably phlegmatic. This, of course, is an oversimplified test, and it only considers your predominant temperament. But it will help you even at this point to have a strong indication of which temperament you are. As you progress through the book, you will find more confirmation of what your basic temperament is. Or you may find that learning more details about the various temperaments will reveal that your first selection is really a second B temperament. But that usually happens when a person is balanced between a primary and secondary temperament. More true temperament testing will be given later in this book. But first, you need to know more about this fascinating subject. People are different. Now that you have met the four temperaments, you no doubt realize why people are individuals. Not only are there four distinct types of temperaments that produces those differences, but the combinations, mixtures, and degrees of temperaments multiply the possible differences. In spite of that, however, most people reveal a pattern of behavior that indicates they lean toward one predominant temperament. Recently, I had an experience that graphically portrayed the difference of temperaments. It was necessary for me to find a thermofax machine while speaking at the summer high school camp. In the small town nearby, the only one available was in the education center. When I arrived by appointment, I found 9 people hard at work. The calm, orderly, and efficient surroundings made me realize that I was in the presence of individuals of a predominantly melancholy or phlegmatic temperament. This was later confirmed as the superintendent carefully completed my bill and refused my money because it was against the rules. Instead, he took me to the meticulous treasurer who took us to the bookkeeper, who in turn relayed us to the cashier, who finally arranged for me to give my $1.44 to the switchboard operator, who kept the petty cash lest some of their bookkeeping records would have been altered. The clincher was a pretty cash box which clearly revealed the thought of a perfectionist. The change had been carefully stacked in neat piles of quarters, dimes, and nickels. As I surveyed the placid environment and noted their calm but definite concern for this minor problem, my mind flitted hilariously to the scene of the sales office where they had sold the overhead projector. There are sales staff, chief executive, and all the employees were predominantly of the extroverted, choleric, or sanguine temperament. The place was a disorganized mess. Papers were strewn everywhere. Telephones and desks were unattended. The office was a hubbub of noisy activity. Finally, above the din of voices, I heard the sales manager say to the staff with a look of desperation, "One of these days we are going to get organized around here." These two scenes show the natural contrast of the inherited traits that produce human temperament. They also point out the fact that all four of the basic temperaments we have described are needed for variety and purposefulness. No single temperament is contains strength and richness, and yet one is fraught with its own weakness and dangers. How to improve yourself by overcoming your weakness is the purpose of this book. Part 2. What temperament are you? Chapter 2. The 12 blends of temperament. The chief objection to the theory of the four temperaments as advocated by the ancients is that it was overly simplistic in assuming every person could be characterized by only one of the four temperaments. As I have said in my previous book on temperament, that is just is not true. We are all a blend of at least two temperaments. One predominates, the other is secondary. In an attempt to make the temperament theory more practical and true to life, we shall briefly examine 12 possible blends of temperament. In all probability, it will be easier for you to identify yourself in one of the blends than in one of the four basics. A variety of blends. Essentially, each person is capable of possessing 20 strengths and 20 weaknesses. to 1 degree. As I have said in my previous book on temperament, that it just is not true. One predominates. We are all a blend of at least two temperaments. One predominates. A variety of blends. Eventually, each person is capable of possessing 20 strengths and 20 weaknesses to 1 degree or another, 10 for the predominant and 10 for the secondary temperament, and 10 for the secondary temperament. Some of them, as we shall see, cancel each other out. Some reinforce each other, and some accentuate and compound others, accounting for this will become clearer as we study the following 12 blends of temperament. The sanctular. The strongest extrovert of all the blends of temperament will be the sanctular. For the two temperaments that make up his nature are both extroverted. The happy charisma of the sanguine makes him people-oriented, enthusiastic, salesman type, but the choleric side of his nature will provide him the necessary resolution and character traits that will fashion a somewhat more organized and productive individual than if he were pure sanguine. Almost any people-oriented field is open to him, but to sustain his interest, it must offer variety, activity, and excitement. The potential weaknesses of a circle are apparent to everyone because he is such an external person. He customarily talks too much, thus exposing himself and his weaknesses for all to see. He is highly opinionated, consequently he exposes himself loudly before all of the facts. To be honest, no one has much mouth trouble. If he is the life of the party, he is lovable. But if he feels threatened or insecure, he become obnoxious. His leading emotional problem will be anger, which can catapult him into action at the slightest provocation. Since he combines the easy forgetfulness of the sanguine and the stubborn casuistry of the choleric, he may not have a very active conscience. Consequently, he tends to justify his actions. This man, like any other temperament, needs to be filled daily with the Holy Spirit and the Word of God. Simon Peter, the appointed leader of the 12 apostles, is a classic example of a New Testament sanctuary. He obviously had bad mouth. He obviously had mouth trouble, demonstrating this repeatedly by speaking up before anyone else could. He talked more in the Gospels than all the others put together, and most of what he said was wrong. He was egotistical, weak-willed, and carnal throughout the Gospels. In Acts, however, he was a remarkably transformed man, resolute and effective and productive. What made the difference? He was egotistical, weak-willed, and carnal, remarkably transformed man, resolute, effective, and productive. What made the difference? He was filled with the Spirit. Then we have the Samuel. Samuels are highly emotional people who fluctuate drastically. You can laugh hysterically 1 minute and burst into tears the next. It is almost impossible for them to hear a sad tale, observe a tragic plight of another person, or listen to melancholic music without weeping profusely. They genuinely feel the grief of others. Almost any field is open to it, especially public speaking, acting, music, and then fine art. Almost any field is open to them, especially public speaking, acting, music. However, some males reflect an uninhibited perfectionism that often alienates them from others because they verbalize their criticism. They are usually people oriented. They often alienate them from others because they verbalize their criticism. They are usually people oriented individuals who have sufficient substance to make a contribution to other lives. If their ego and arrogance doesn't make them so obnoxious that others become hostile to them, one of the crucial weaknesses of this temperament prevails in some males' thought life. Both sanguines and melancholies are dreamers, and thus, if the melancholy part of his nature suggests a negative train of thought, it can nullify a Samuel's potential. It is easy for him to get down on himself. In addition, this person, more than most others, will have both an anger problem and a tendency towards fear. Both temperaments in its makeup suffer with an insecurity problem. Not uncommonly, he is fearful to utilize his potential. Being admired by others is so important to him that it will drive him to a consistent that being it's driven to a consistent level of performance. He has a great ability to commune with God, and if he works in the spirit, he will make an effective servant of Christ. King David is a classic illustration of the Samuel temperament, an extremely likable man who attracted both men and women. He was colorful, dramatic, emotional, and weak-willed. He could play a harp and sing. He clearly demonstrated a poetic instinct in his psalms. He clearly demonstrated a poetic instinct in his psalms and he made a decision on impulse. Unfortunately, like many Samuels, he fouled up his life by a series of disastrous and costly mistakes. He gained enough self-discipline to finish out his destiny. All Samuels, of course, are not able to pick up the pieces of their lives and start over as David did. It is far better for them to walk in the Spirit daily and avoid such mistakes. The sand plague. The easiest person to like is a sand plague. The overpowering and obnoxious tendencies of a sanguine are offset by the gracious, easygoing phlegmatic. Sand plagues are extremely happy people whose carefree spirit and good humor make them light-hearted entertainers sought after by others. Helping people is their regular business, along with sales of various kinds. They are the least extroverted of any of the sanguines and are often regulated by their environment and circumstances rather than being motivated. Some flags are naturally pro-family and preserve the love of their children and everyone else for that matter. They would not purposely hurt anyone. The sunflake's weaknesses are lack of motivation and discipline. He would rather socialize than work, and he tends to take life too casually. As an executive remarked about one, he is the nicest guy I ever fired. He rarely gets obsessed over anything and tends to find a bright side of everything. He usually has an endless repertoire of jokes and delights in making others laugh, often when the occasion calls for seriousness. When Jesus Christ becomes the chief object of his love, he is transformed into a more resolute, purposeful, and productive person. The first century evangelist Apollos is about as close as we can come to a New Testament illustration of the Psalm plague. A skilled orator who succeeded Paul and others who had founded the churches, he did the work and stirring the churches with a spirit-filled preaching and teaching, loved by all, followed devotedly by some. This pleasant and dedicated man apparently traveled a great deal, but did not found new works. Then we have the Clausan. The second strongest extrovert among the blends of temperament will be the reverse of the first. The Clausan, this man's life is given over completely to activity. Most of his efforts are productive and what is recreation. It is so activity prone that it borders on being violent. He is a natural promoter and salesman with enough charisma to get along well with others. Certainly the best motivator of people and one who thrives on a challenge. He is almost fearless and exhibits boundless energy. His wife will often comment he has only two spirits, wide open and stubborn. Mr. Clausen is the courtroom attorney who can charm the coldest-hearted judge and jury, the fundraiser who can get people to contribute when they intended to save. the man who never goes anywhere unnoticed, the preacher who combines both practical and Bible teaching and church administration, and the politician who stalks a state into changing its constitution so it can represent them one more time. A convincing debater, what he lacks in fact of argument he makes up in bluff or bravado. As a teacher, he is an excellent communicator, particularly in the social sciences. Rarely is he drawn to math, science, or the abstract. Whatever his professional occupation, his brain is always in motion. The weaknesses of this man, the chief of what is hostility, are as broad as his talent. He combines the quick, explosive anger on the sanguine without the forgiveness and the long burning resentment of the choleric. He is the one personality type who not only gets ulcers himself but gives them to others. Impatient who does in those who does not share his motivation and energy. He prides himself on being brutally frank. Some call it sarcastically frank. It is difficult for him to concentrate on one thing very long, which is why he often enlists others to finish what he started. He is opinionated, prejudiced, impetuous, and inclined doggedly to finish a project he should probably not have started in the first place. If not controlled by God, he is apt to justify anything he does and rarely hesitates to manipulate or work over other people to accomplish his ends. Most closans get so engrossed in their work that they neglect wife and family, even lashing out at them if they complain. Once he comprehends the importance of giving love and approval to his family, however, he can transform his entire household. James, the author of the biblical book that bears his name, could well have been a closer. At least his book sounds like it. The main thrust of the book declares that faith without work is dead. A favorite work in cholerics. He used the practical and logical reasoning of a choleric, yet was obviously a highly esteemed man of God. One human weakness, he discusses the fire of the tongue and how no man can control it. It leads directly to the temperament, most vulnerable characteristics for all we know. The claws hands feature a razor-sharp, active tongue. His victory and evident productiveness in the cause of Christ is a significant example to any thoughtful closer. The claw male, that's the choleric melancholy, and is an extremely industrious and capable person. The optimism and practicality of the choleric overcome the tendency towards moodiness of the melancholy, making the claw male both goal-oriented and detailed. Such a person usually does well in school, possesses a quick analytical mind, yet is decisive. He develops into a thorough leader, the kind one can always count on to do an extraordinary job. Never take him on in a debate unless you are assured of your facts, for it will make mincemeat of you. Combining verbal aggressiveness and attendance to detail, this man is extremely competitive and forceful in all that he does. He is a dogged researcher and is usually successful no matter what kind of business he pursues. This temperament probably makes the best leader. General George S. Patton, the great commander of the U.S. Third Army in World War II, who drove the German forces back to Berlin, was probably a clawmare. Equally as great as his strengths are his weaknesses, he is apt to be autocratic, a dictator type who inspired admiration and hate simultaneously. He is usually a quick-witted sucker whose sarcasm can devastate others. He is a natural-born crusader whose work habits are irregular and long. A claw male harbors considerable hostility and resentment, and unless he enjoys a good love relationship with his parents, he will find interpersonal relationships difficult, particularly with his family. No man is more apt to be an overly strict disciplinarian than the claw male father. He combines the hard to please tendency of the choleric and the perfectionism of the melancholy. When controlled by the Holy Spirit, however, his entire emotional life is transformed and he makes an outstanding Christian. There is little doubt in my mind that the Apostle Paul was a clawmare. Before his conversation, he was hostile and cruel, for the scripture teaches that he spent his time persecuting and jailing Christians. Even after his conversion, his strong-willed determination turned to unreasonable bull-headedness as when he went up to Jerusalem against the will and warning of God. His writings and ministries demonstrate the combination of the practical analytical reasoning and the self-sacrificing but extremely driving nature of a claw He is a good example of God's transforming power in the life of a claw who is completely dedicated to God.